Prime relay is in range. Initiating transmission sequence. Hitting the relay in 3, 2, 1.
What are you doing? The commander's on her way to Eden Prime, but that is not where we're going. We've got to commandeer the Normandy shuttle before she lands.
What are you talking about? The Normandy SR-1 doesn't have a shuttle.
I know, because we're going to steal it. Are you inserting us into the Mass Effect plot? You better motherfucking believe I am.
We've all been here before, in the midst of high-stakes action, an infiltration, an ambush, or, in my case, a heist. And just when you gather momentum, when the ante could not get any higher, what is this? Can somebody tell me what Frogger in the Round is doing here? Seriously, why is it that every time, just when you're really kicking ass, you get stopped and accosted by some random minigame? It exists to raise the stakes, buddy. Flat Earth Frogger is saying, hey, this is a high security area. Not just anybody can break into here. But is it? I'm all for raising the stakes. And sure, adding additional challenges can certainly do that. But I don't play Mass Effect to play Frogger, but I will because I have to. Well, I happen to like Space Frogger. What then? That's fine. Try to keep this in mind. The example isn't the important part. Somebody somewhere is going to enjoy the thing that I'm critiquing. Perhaps even you at home. Or you, on your favorite toilet at work. Instead, consider how these minigames fit within the larger design and impact the player's experience. A big part of the designer's job is to balance what will engage the most players while remaining true to the game's vision. Think about what people gush over when talking about Mass Effect. What we should be talking about? The characters, the combat, the story? Right. Mass Effect's allure is the right? I think so. Everything else is supplemental, and possibly detrimental. Every time a game interrupts the player's flow, it risks breaking immersion, increasing frustration, and every designer's nightmare, sowing disinterest. So what, Mass Effect would be better off without minigames? Maybe. Maybe not. My point is that our love for Mass Effect isn't forged by its supplemental gameplay, and sometimes it's even in spite of it. Yeah, we get it. You hate minigames and you think they should all be retroactively patched out going all the way back to the Atari 5200. But where are we going anyway? To see an example of a superb minigame, of course. Oh, okay. And where is that exactly? There. This is Quasar, a sort of simplified version of blackjack. Quasar gives us 2 random ranges to bet from, with the intent of getting to 21. Jackpot, go over, and you bust. This is superb? It's basic. Exactly. Obviously, minigames aren't the star of the show, so they've got to be extra efficient at teaching us how to play. So it's easy to understand. Big deal. It's not just how easy it is to understand, it's also how instantly identifiable it is. I mean, look at this thing. It's gaudy like Vegas, but also spacey, like space. BioWare could have put a standard slot machine here, but instead, they invented a new game that resonates with our expectations of what gambling games feel like, while also being novel to Mass Effect. Like Gwent, or Orlog, or even poker in Red Dead Redemption, Quasar is a cultural artifact that, in its own small way, helps immerse us in this universe. Well, it's optional. It can't be that immersive. Its optionality makes it even more immersive. Sure, you can totally skip it and not miss much, but maybe you have some credits to burn. Or maybe your shepherd has developed a bit of a gambling problem, trying to de-stress from saving the galaxy.
Oh, wow, okay.
The choice to bet on a game of Quasar is a microscopic opportunity for open-ended roleplay. In an RPG otherwise limited to the bounds of its branching narrative, it's here that your intentions and behavior are purely your own.
Nobody's reading into it that much.
I know, probably not. I'm just saying that while playing Quasar is narratively inconsequential, it does add to the internal narrative of what your shepherd did, whether that's meaningful to you or not. We're not done with Quasar just yet, but we gotta go.
What? We just got here.
I know, but there's an Asari transport that we have to stow away on.
Well, that should be easy.
It will be, we're just gonna cut to the next scene.
So let me get this straight. You think that Quasar is superb because it plays like a quote-unquote authentic Mass Effect gambling game.
Yep, pretty much.
I don't get that. Is there even such a thing as an inauthentic gambling game?
Of course. When a minigame's design is thematically and contextually on point, it's effectively invisible to us. But imagine if Quasar unironically looked like something out of the Flintstones, or worse, wasn't even a gambling-style game in the first place.
You're saying that how something plays can reinforce our expectations.
Or subvert them, or destroy them, yeah. How something plays tells a story of its own. The quality of that story depends on how representative and compelling the gameplay is within the context of the narrative. This is known in game studies as Ludo-Narrative Resonance or Ludo-Narrative Harmony. Ludo, or ludic systems, refers to how a game functions isolated from its story. The rules, the points, the damage, the obstacles, yada yada yada. The narrative obviously refers to the story context in which we play. If the way we play is disjointed from the story or contradicts our character's goals or values, this is known as ludonarrative dissonance. Historically, ludic systems and narrative have been studied as separate parallel concepts, but for the sake of design, it seems to me that ludonarrative should be treated as a singular, inseparable phenomenon. Our behavior in a game is a self-driven story. Where you go, how you get there, the effort you take to accomplish your goals. These differ from player to player, from replay to replay. It might not be obvious, but this inherent quality of how and why we play begins to strain the definition of game.
Oh, here we go.
What we call game design seems more accurately called Ludo-Narrative Design, at least in titles where the story is the focal point. After all, not everything we do in these experiences is scored or results in a win or loss. Okay, I digress. If you want to dive deeper into this train of thought, check out my video on what is a game. And just know that when I say Ludo-Narrative Design from here on, I am referring to what we conventionally call game design.
Cool. Can we get back on topic, please?
Yes. Unfortunately, not all design challenges can be addressed with a simple, clear-cut minigame like Quasar. When a video game story requires bespoke action that's just different from its playstyle, designers have two main options. They can put that action into a cutscene, or create a minigame to bridge the gap. The second option favors player agency, but the problem then becomes, how do you design a minigame that can be both picked up instantly and challenging enough to represent the obstacle at hand? Well, as we know, when a writer puts their story to paper, the language they use is sometimes literal, sometimes figurative, and sometimes both. Ludo-Narrative Design is no different. In fact, the playstyle often found in minigames is figurative because it tends to be emblematic of more complex behavior.
Jeremy.
What, Counterbot? I'm in the middle of...
We should go. Well, I can't believe that worked.
I don't think it did. Those Rachni are tearing the whole station apart.
Honestly, what's the worst they could do?
Critical failure. Landline connections are disabled.
That's not so bad.
Critical failure. Passenger tram systems are offline.
There is no way to know that has anything to do with...
Critical failure. Main reactor shut down in accordance with emergency containment
Okay,
procedures.
my bad for saving our lives.
Part of Shepard's mission has just become restoring the station back to functional capacity, which includes bringing its AI Mira back online by reconfiguring its databanks. This is Tower of Hanoi. Our goal is to move all blocks from here to here. The catch is that only the topmost block can be moved, and the moving block must be higher on the stack than all of the other blocks on its destination. Kinda tricky until you get the hang of it. BioWare has used Tower several times in the past as a minigame, but it's not a BioWare original. In fact, it not just predates BioWare, but also the 20th century.
So why is it here in 2183? And what does it have to do with reconfiguring databanks?
I am so glad you asked. IT, tech-savvy people, bear with me. Everyone else, I want you to relax your mind and conjure that friend or family member who sets up every piece of technology you've ever purchased. I invite you now to envelop your senses in the tedium of vague manuals. Immerse yourself in the downloads that you got from a website made in 1997. Realize that you have to go back to Micro Center for that f***ing adapter. Embrace eternity.
What the f*** was that?
Sorry, didn't I tell you? I went on this Asari Huntress meditation retreat. Bored. Anyway, my point is that good Ludo-Narrative Design replaces tedium and monotony with a form of play that's hopefully a little bit more fun. When the story needs us to perform some bespoke action, it's usually easier for both the designer and the player to represent that with a simple, symbolic activity. For example, this lockpicking minigame in Assassin's Creed Unity.
Yeah, that's clearly not how locks are actually picked. But how do we know that Tower of Hanoi is figurative? Maybe in this universe, databank reconstruction works exactly like this.
I highly doubt that, but I can see why you might think so. Hanoi's presentation as this tall tower of shiny holographic boxes evokes our shared notion of futuristic computer hardware. These aesthetics, combined with its tricky rules of play, dupe our brains into thinking that we're doing something that we aren't actually doing. In this case, fixing server hardware.
Isn't that all video game design though? Everything we do in a video game is approximate for something.
Technically, sure. But practically, no. Let's go take a look at some literal design and I think you'll see what I mean. But please don't be mad at me.
Why would I be mad at you? It's not like we're gonna get on a ship full of murderous robots again. Unbelievable.
Okay, yes, our destination has a little bit of a murder robot problem, and it just so happens that this ship controls all of those murder robots remotely. But, good thing, Shepard only has to dislodge this bad boy from the side of a building to sever their connection.
Oh, is that all?
Luckily, one of the landing claws is situated between a set of malfunctioning hydraulic doors. Provided with several pressure settings, Shepard just needs to do a few calibrations to trigger a system fault, slamming the door shut. Bye-bye Geth control ship. And it's here that we have an example of more literal interactive design. Now, no, it's not literally literal. I mean, we aren't doing every granular step, like twisting knobs or blorping the glorps or whatever. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we're doing some clever calculations to exploit a hardware flaw, and that mirrors the actions that we take were these circumstances real life. I like this minigame because it only features what the designer thought would most immerse us. We don't need to know how any of this hardware works. Just adding up the right critical pressure is enough to induce roleplay and to drop a little dopamine when we figure out the final combination. On paper, A+. The mechanics fit the circumstance, the level's aesthetics tie our actions back to the environment. It's technically well designed, but
the problem is that it's math.
yeah, it's just math. And look, I'm a game programmer. I like math. I'm a little mathy. But while I like math, I really hate math. And I really hate math in non-mathy video games, especially when it's mandatory.
And let's be real, in Mass Effect, I should only need my mouth and my trigger finger to solve any problem in the galaxy.
Just because a minigame is mechanically and aesthetically on point doesn't guarantee it's going to be fun for all players. This math problem isn't particularly hard, but contrasted with Mass Effect's playstyle, it serves as a roadblock for the arithmetic-averse.
Stupid people.
No, not stupid people. Most people, myself included.
Right. I hate to interrupt this brilliant little bit of banter, but our buddies are back. And in case you haven't noticed, there's no Red Lobster's ultimate endless shrimp to save us this time.
Yeah, what do we do?
Well, I'm guessing that Omni tool of yours does more than tell time.
Oh yeah.
Coming through. Hello.
I already hate this.
We've established that minigames are really useful for staging all kinds of experiences that fall outside of main gameplay, but that usually comes at the cost of context switching from one skill set to another. When I said earlier that there's only 2 ways to solve this bespoke action problem, I failed to mention the obvious. Crafting a narrative around only what the game's main mechanics allow for and nothing else avoids this issue altogether. Portal is a great example of a story that doesn't extend beyond the capacity of its gameplay, partially because that gameplay provides a deep Ludo-narrative flexibility. Portal evolves from a puzzle game to a platformer to a stealth game to a puzzle platformer stealth game, all without ever switching skill sets on us.
I smell an anti-minigame rant coming.
No. I'm just pointing out that designing games this way provides a certain consistency in its entertainment that you can't always guarantee when it's peppered full of minigames. Turning back to the minigames that we just looked at, do any of those resemble the kind of fun that we would expect to have in Mass Effect?
Probably not, but they're such a tiny fraction of Mass Effect's playtime. Were they really worth making a whole video about?
Yes, that's the point that I've been trying to make. Playtime, irrelevant. Every mandatory off-genre minigame risks player disengagement.
I get that, and I see your point, and I'm gonna let you finish. But just because a minigame is mandatory does not mean that it has to be a game killer. Daniel Mullen's killer game, Inscription, shows us that mandatory minigames can help build the deeper world while also reinforcing a player's comprehension. Inscription's story constantly pokes us to stop playing its core card game and go hunting for its juicy forbidden secrets. This exploration is chock full of minigames, many of which are mandatory. Some are super easy. They only exist to be part of this aha moment as we uncover a new clue. Others are a more complex remix of the main game's card mechanics, forming a new way to play that takes advantage of our developing skills. These minigames make us get good at the main card game because they force us to understand how various card effects work together. Even more interesting, in the late game, new mechanics are introduced through these minigames that eventually make their way back into the main card game itself.
So they're not just minigames, they're tutorials.
Exactly. If that wasn't enough, Inscription's minigames reflect the nature of various characters you encounter. It's all very meta, it's all very immersive, and would be nowhere near as useful for world building or player learning if they had all been completely optional.
Well, fair counterpoint, Counterbot.
Thank you. I did a smart. Now pay me.
What?
With your soul.
No.
I'll get it later.
Now, I couldn't help but notice that during your description of Inscription's minigames, that because they are complementary to the main gameplay, they effectively function like Portal's levels do. More of a change of context than a change of play style.
Yeah, I can see that. And you really do have to have the last word, don't you?
Or, when they are a different genre, they're kept extremely simple, not meant to challenge, but to evoke a specific emotional response. And now that I'm thinking about it, there is a minigame in Mass Effect that's especially immersive because it's simple, emotionally evocative, and mandatory. Well, seemingly mandatory, for reasons that will become clear. But for us to appreciate it at its best, we first need to see it at its not best.
Oh, well, this place is charming. Do you bring all your friends down here before killing them, or am I just special?
You don't think if I could kill you, I wouldn't have by now?
I was just kidding.
Oh, yeah, me too. Sabotage that, would you? I'm not gonna kill you.
Deploying. Who's there?
You see that mining laser? With the elevator out of order, there's only one way for Shepard to get out of here. But that thing has no simple on switch. A few blind calibrations are required to activate the beam. At first glance, it's hard to tell if this minigame's design is figurative or literal. I mean, Shepard isn't a miner, so maybe this is meant to simulate her guesswork trying to use the laser's controls. Guesswork, guessing minigame, sure, why not? Or it's a literal password to access the laser's on switch. Aesthetically, yeah. Athletically speaking, nothing about this minigame is grounded in what Shepard is doing. Neither the visuals nor the sound effects clue us in about how our actions are powering up the laser beam. That's like Immersion 101. Right. Literal, figurative, it doesn't matter. One isn't better than the other. To restate my earlier point, it comes down to how specific the gameplay feels to the task at hand. In this case, the minigame is rather generic, so it feels kinda arbitrary. But we didn't come down here just to shit on this minigame, only to show you that context is everything.
You do realize that this is not how portals work, right?
Go make friends.
Yeah, fair enough.
I told you we'd come back to Quasar. Now, while in the casino, Shepard comes across someone or something scamming credits from random Quasar winnings and into a private account. P.S. Quasar actually being playable helps internalize this discovery. Could some of my winnings have been taken? Tracing the signal, Shepard ends up here, where she uncovers a rogue AI stowed away until it can transfer itself off the Citadel. Once caught, that AI gives its best audition for a Netflix true crime series, promising to murder-suicide everyone in the vicinity. So Shepard needs to disable this self-destruct mechanism, and it's here that we see a familiar friend. Now, this minigame is still ambiguous, Ludo-narratively speaking, but despite that, it works well on a visceral level because here it's accompanied by a timer. With limited time, we have to frantically assess how to play and solve this minigame, or die trying. This pressure makes Shepard's anxiety become our anxiety, and the lines blur between us, the player, and Shepard, the character. You can see how thin of a line this can be, though. If the minigame was too hard, or if the timer was too short, our frustration could just as easily yank us out of this moment. Cleverly, this was also factored into the design. The power station in the corner, you can just destroy that and it'll shut down the AI, avoiding the minigame altogether. But such brute force has its own consequences. It wipes any leftover credits on the machine. But if you disable the AI properly, you get to keep the extra bounty. Consequences like these create an illusion of causality. The world responds reasonably to all available choices. What's better is this is presented primarily through play alone. We don't need any clunky exposition to tell us what happened or why. Everything can just be inferred from cause and effect. This is immersive design at its most ideal because it leverages our observation and deductive reasoning. We aren't being fed a narrative, we arrive at one based on our senses, our actions, and the consequences thereof. And what could be more immersive than that? So, as you can see, minigames are a useful tool in the designer's tool belt, but they're a bit of a double-edged sword. A minigame of the wrong genre in the wrong game can, at best, tank the fun for a moment, or, at worst, dissuade us from playing altogether. But done right, minigames add depth to the world and can be used to reinforce or extrapolate upon a game's main style of play. Wow, did we finally finish this essay? We did, and it only took over a year. To be fair, production on this did not take a whole year, but doing this with a full-time job did take a bit longer than I wanted. So I am revisiting my process with the intent of putting out videos monthly. Starting in November, I am taking a much-needed break. If you enjoyed my work and you can afford to, a monetary donation would be greatly appreciated. Link to my Ko-fi in the description. And no worries if you can't. Sharing this with anyone who has even a passing interest in game design helps support my future work. You can follow Gameservatory on Twitter, Reddit, or Instagram to catch all the latest channel updates, and we can chat about games. Don't worry, I will let you know if your opinion is the correct one. Well, that's all for today, folks. So, until next time, happy gaming. Well, it's not like we're gonna we're not gonna It's not like we're gonna get on a ship full of murderous robots again. We're not gonna get on a ship full of murderous robots again. We're not gonna get on a ship full of murderous robots again.